Hey, what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here with what deck profile for the Fluffal OTK deck 2017 version. I'm just going to go through everything in here, and I'll explain how it works. So we have 3 Fluffal Dog, 3 Fluffle Penguin, 3 Edge Imp Chain, 3 Fluffle Bear, 2 Edge Imp Sabres, 2 Fluffle Owl, 3 Fluffle Mouse, and 3 Fluffle Wings. For our spells, we have 2 Frightfur Fusion, 1 Raigeki, 2 Polymerization, 3 Frightfur Patchwork, 2 Dark Hole, 3 Terraforming, 3 Toy Vendor, and 2 Fusion Recycling Plant. We're playing no traps. The extra deck has 1 Frightfur sabre-tooth, 2 Frightfur Kraken, 1 Frightfur Wolf, 2 Frightfur Saber Tiger, 2 Frightfur Sheep, 1 Utopia the Lightning, 1 Utopia Prime, 1 regular Utopia, 1 Heartland Draco, 1 Castell, 1 the Phantom Knights of Breaksword, and 1 Slacker Magician. The side deck I'll go over in a moment. So the Fluffal OTK deck, it's fairly linear. There's one play that you want to make 90% of the time. It can do a couple other things, but most of the time what you want to do is make Frightfur Tiger and then Frightfur Wolf. Frightfur Tiger is Edge Imp Sabres plus 1 or more Fluffle monsters, and when this is summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of fusion materials used and destroy them. Frightfur Wolf is Edge Imp Sabres and 1 or more Fluffles, and it can attack each battle phase up to the number of materials that you used. So if you fusion summon Frightfur Tiger, you can blow up every card on your opponent's field, make a clear board, then you summon Frightfur Wolf, and if you use at least 4 materials, you can attack directly for game with just him. Even with just 3, you're good too, because Frightfur Tiger has the additional effect that all Frightfur monsters gain 300 attack for every Fluffle or Frightfur monster you control, so he's boosting both of their attacks. So in order to make these, we've got, obviously, Polymerization is usually what you're going to be using to make your Frightfur Tiger. You got your Edge Imp Sabres plus any number of these other Fluffles, it doesn't really matter how many you use. And then we have Frightfur Fusion. This lets you fusion summon a Frightfur monster from your extra deck by banishing the material on the field or in the graveyard. So if you use 4 monsters, and you make this, and then you have Frightfur Fusion, you can banish those same 4 materials for Frightfur Wolf, and you've pretty much got game. Everything else in this deck is just made to supplement or speed up this process in some way. Of course, Sabres you have to play because you need it as material for both of them. We're only playing 2 of them because there's a lot of ways to search it. You really don't want more than 1 in your hand. You only need 1 to conduct your play. One of the main searchers is Fluffal Dog. When this is normal or special summon from the hand, you can add 1 Edge Imp Sabres or 1 Fluffle monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use it once per turn. So this will get you Sabres, as well as any of your other Fluffle monsters if you need them. You can also search Sabres with Frightfur Patchwork. This will let you add 1 Polymerization and 1 Edge Imp monster from your deck to your hand. I think this is pretty obvious why this is a great card, and it's also why we're only playing the 2 Polymerizations, because you could search it out with the Frightfur Patchwork. We're also playing 2 Fluffle Owls. When this is normal or special summoned, you can add 1 Polymerization from your deck to your hand, or pay 500 life points to fusion summon a Frightfur using monsters from your hand or your side of the field. And probably most importantly, we're playing Fusion Recycling Plant. This is once per turn. You can discard 1 card to add Polymerization from your deck, or more importantly, your graveyard. This allows you to just play the 2 Polymerizations. If you need to fuse again, you can always just add this back from your graveyard to your hand by discarding anything. And we have a lot of cards that work in the graveyard. In addition, like, we're playing 3 Frightfur Patchwork, which you can't activate if you already have your 2 Polymerizations, but you can always discard it for Fusion Recycling Plant, which keeps cards from becoming dead in your hand. That's why we're playing the 3 Terraforming, that of course searches out the Fusion Recycling Plant, which, like with Sabres, we're only playing it 2, because if you get more than 1 in your hand, it can be kind of bricky, but if you just play 1, then you run the chance of your opponent removing it, and you have no way to recover it. Fortunately, because you can discard any card to get Polymerization, it makes it so these Terraformings aren't dead as well. If you already have your Fusion Recycling Plant, you can always just discard them to add a Polymerization from your graveyard to your hand. So that covers all the different ways you can get Polymerization, and then, now that I'm thinking about it, I was mentioning how you can get this card to your hand, and I forgot Toy Vendor. This is a neat little card. It's once per turn. You can discard 1 card, draw 1 card. Reveal it. If it's a Fluffle, you could special summon 1 monster from your hand. Otherwise, send the card you drew to the graveyard. If this is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Edge Imp, Sabres, or Fluffle from your deck to your hand. This is great because if it's sent to the graveyard by any way, you get to activate its effect. So you could discard this with Toy Vendor, or you could set it on the field to have your opponent destroy it. Or you could use the standard Fluffle draw engine, which has to do with Fluffle Bear and Fluffle Wings. Fluffle Bear you can discard to set 1 Toy Vendor directly from your deck. And then Fluffle Wings, if this is in your graveyard and you control a Toy Vendor, you can banish this and another Fluffle from your graveyard to draw 1 card. Then send Toy Vendor to the graveyard and draw another card. And of course, when Toy Vendor goes to the graveyard, you'll be able to search your scissors or any of your other Fluffles if you need to. So this is an easy just +3 because you're discarding the bear will be in the graveyard to be used for Fluffle wings. And of course, if you draw a Fluffle, you could special summon it onto the field, use one of its effects. Dog will get its effect when it's special summoned. Same with Owl. Same with Mouse. This is probably one of the more techie cards we have in here. This is, during your main phase, you could special summon up to 2 other copies of Fluffle Mouse from your deck, but you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except for Frightfurs this turn. So just a decent, like if you get this and you normal summon it, or if you happen to draw with Toy Vendor and you have this in your hand, you could special summon it, and then you get 2 other Fluffle Mouse from your deck. So that's already 3 cards that you can use as material for your fusion. Plus it also helps deck thin so you can get to some of your other cards and stuff that you need. The final Fluffle we're playing is Fluffle Penguin. This is during your main phase, you can special summon 1 Fluffle from your hand except for Penguin. This can only be used once while this card is face up on the field. So that one's pretty good because like if you normal summon that, then you could special summon Dog, use its effect, and then even if you can't fusion summon, or if you have extra material for your fusion summon, you can use these 2 to make some of your rank 4 monsters like Utopia. You can also just, if you normal summon this, and then later on you draw something, you can then special summon it from your hand later to get the effect. More importantly, this has the effect that if it's used for a fusion material of a Frightfur monster, you can draw 2 cards, and then discard 1 card. This is good not just for general draw power, getting things in the graveyard, but because of the way simultaneous effects go on a chain. If you fusion summon, say, a Frightfur Tiger with your Fluffle Penguin, both its effect and the Penguin's effect will go off at the same time, so you get to choose what order they go into. If you choose Tiger first and then Penguin, even if they have like a Solemn Strike, they're only going to be able to respond to that second link. They can only respond to Fluffle Penguin, which keeps your Frightfur Tiger from being Solemn Striked. Really, really strong. Really good, especially if you're playing against more meta-type decks. The only other cards I didn't mention was Edge Imp Chains. This is a decent one. If it attacks, you can add another copy of itself from the deck. Rarely used, but I mean occasionally. Most importantly, if it's sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Frightfur card from your deck to your hand, which includes Frightfur Patchwork and Frightfur Fusion. So normally you want to discard this, either with Toy Vendor or with Fusion Recycling Plant, or by drawing 2 and discarding it with Penguin. Any way you get this to the graveyard will help you get your Frightfur Fusion. If worse comes to worse, you can also use this to fusion summon. Frightfur Sheep is a pretty nice little defensive card. It's made with Edge Imp Chain and 1 Fluffle monster. If it attacks or is attacked, your opponent can't activate effects. And if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon it from the graveyard and it has 800 attack. So to go up to 2800, it has a steamroll effect, and they have to destroy it twice, which is pretty nice. Probably the most defensive card in here. You can also use it to make this Frightfur Kraken, because this is just an Edge Imp monster, meaning you can use either of these, plus 1 Fluffle monster. This once per turn, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. This card cannot attack directly the turn this effect is activated, but it can make a second attack during each battle phase. That's even if you do use that effect. And then at the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, you can change it to defense position. So this is a pretty decent one. It's good for getting rid of big monsters that can't be destroyed by card effects or can't be run over by battle. And it's kind of a decent defense wall at 3000. Some people will make this over Sheep. I kind of prefer Sheep just because it comes back. The only other things I didn't mention were this just Raigeki and 2 Dark Holes, the Triumvirate of Destruction. Again, pretty good in the current meta just for clearing out the field. We already clear out things, but if they have something like Tree Toad that's going to be negating monster effects, this can be a pretty good way to out that, to make them waste their negation effects, or to just clear off like a whole field worth of Zodiacs. This is also what I'd call your tech slot for this deck. If you run into a deck that these aren't really effective against, like maybe Magispectors, where you're going to want more Spell Trap destruction, that's when you put in your Twin Twisters. If you're running against something where you need to negate their effects, they're not going to be destroyed normally, then I'd probably put in Forbidden Chalices. The rest of these here in the side deck are just sort of other options, which I'll go over in a second. But first I want to talk about the last extra deck card, which is Frightfur Sabre-tooth. This is made with one of your Frightfur fusion monsters, as well as 1 or more Fluffle and or Edge Imp monsters. So if this is summoned, you can target 1 Frightfur in your graveyard, special summon it, all Frightfurs gain 400 attack, and if this was fusion summoned using 3 or more materials, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. This is really great, just sort of like adding a boss monster onto things. You summon out Tiger, you then destroy everything with Tiger, and if you've got a second polymerization, you can use this as material to make a saber-tooth. Saber-tooth will bring Tiger back, so now you still have his attack, you still have the boost, but there's more Frightfurs on the field. I also should mention the extra deck is mostly just a toolbox of things. I like Utopia the Lightning for getting over things that are really, really high attack. I like this for doing some extra attack directly damage. This is some removal, this is some removal. This is just in case you get 2 Fluffle Mice or a Fluffle Mice and a Fluffle Wings and you need to stall. But really, you could run whatever you want for these slots, although I would recommend running at least a couple 4s because Fluffle Penguin lets you have more access to rank 4s, which is why I've included some of them in the extra deck, things like Dark Rebellion, Silent Honor Arc, and Giant Hand. Finally, we just have this other new Fluffle. This is Fluffle Octo. When it's normal or special summoned, you could target a Fluffle or an Edge Imp in your graveyard, add it to your hand. Probably more importantly, if it's sent to the graveyard as fusion material, you can target 2 of your banished monsters and return them to the graveyard. This can be really good to side in, maybe instead of Owl, if you're going against a deck that does banish your materials and you need to get them back. Other than that, there's a couple other techs that I wanted to include but just couldn't fit them in. Evil Hero Infernal Gainer is pretty good. It's during your main phase. You can banish this card to target a fiend, and that can make 2 attacks during each battle phase. All of your Frightfur monsters are fiends, so being able to give them a second attack on top of what they already have is just pretty decent. Way to OTK even stronger. I just couldn't really fit it in here because sometimes it would be a dead draw. And Foolish Burial of Goods. Send 1 spell trap from your deck to the graveyard. This one works pretty good just because you can use it with Toy Vendor. This will let you search out Edge Imp Sabres a lot easier, as well as any other Fluffle card. You could even probably just run this down to 1. The only reason I don't is because there's a chance that it could get banished and then you're just screwed because most of your materials need it. But if you wanted to try to make this even faster, remove even more Fluffles, you could always play 3 of these, use it to send Toy Vendor, and use that to search out. So there you go, there's my Fluffle deck. I know there's more techs and stuff that you could do with Fluffles. There was a guy who was really trying to get me to play Fluffle Synchro a while ago, where you can make these big fusion monsters and then summon things like Plague Spreader to make level 8s, but I just wasn't really getting into it. But there's a lot of different ideas. Comment in the comments with your different Fluffle builds or different things you've done with them. Next week, I have no idea what I'm playing, so it'll be a surprise. Until then, good luck, have fun.